Throughout the shadows of human history, we've always looked to the dark for answers. And when no answers came, we created monsters. Among those monsters, none have stalked our imaginations quite like the werewolf. The myth of the werewolf didn't start with Hollywood or paperback horror novels. It began long before, deep in the forests of Europe, where whispers of the beast carried on the wind. In Norse mythology, there were tales of the Ulfhednar, warriors who donned wolf pelts and became savage in battle. In Greek lore, the legend of King Lycaon told of a man cursed by the gods for his impiety, doomed to become a ravenous wolf. And in 16th century France, villagers claimed entire families turned under the full moon, tearing livestock to shreds and vanishing before dawn. The werewolf has changed faces over time, sometimes a cursed soul, sometimes a punishment, and sometimes a warning. But why? Why has this creature endured for centuries, morphing and adapting, never quite disappearing from our nightmares? The answer, perhaps, lies in what the werewolf represents. In the 20th century, werewolves exploded into pop culture. From The Wolf Man in 1941 to modern shows like Teen Wolf and the originals, they've prowled across screens both big and small. Unlike vampires who seduce and scheme, the werewolf embodies something more primal, the rage within, the loss of control, the animal underneath the skin. These stories aren't just fantasy, they're a reflection of something deeply human. Take An American Werewolf in London, where the horror isn't just the transformation, but the guilt, the helplessness, the inevitability. Or Ginger Snaps, a cult classic where lycanthropy mirrors adolescence and bodily change. Even in the Harry Potter series, the werewolf becomes a metaphor for isolation, stigma, and illness. There's something hauntingly relatable about the beast within. The idea that under the surface we too might be something we don't fully understand, something dangerous. The psychological appeal is clear. Werewolves are the ultimate duality, man and monster, civilization and savagery, control and chaos. And perhaps that's why we keep telling these stories. Because on some level we're not afraid of the wolf. We're afraid of becoming it. And if you listen closely, to the news, to the forums, to the hushed confessions in dark corners, you'll realize something strange. People still believe. There are modern reports, strange sightings, eyewitnesses who swear they saw something not quite human. Entire online communities dedicated to werewolf lore, transformations, and first-hand experiences. Some claim it's a metaphor. Others aren't so sure. But before you laugh it off, before you dismiss it as mere fantasy, ask yourself, if werewolves weren't real, why do we keep seeing them? And more importantly, what would you do if one was living among us? Not in the woods, not in the mountains, but here, in your neighborhood, in your office, in your mirror. Because if the myths have survived this long, perhaps the monsters have too. So you've begun to wonder. You've heard the stories. You've seen the signs. But how do you know? How do you spot a werewolf in real life? Forget Hollywood for a moment. No torn shirts, no dramatic howls under full moons. Real werewolves, if they walk among us, don't want to be seen. They blend in, they wait, and they only reveal their true nature when it's too late. But even the most cautious predator leaves a trace. Let's start with behavior. The most consistent trait across all werewolf lore is the presence of heightened senses, an uncanny ability to hear whispers from across a room, to smell things others can't, to see in the dark. You might notice someone who reacts too quickly, who flinches at sounds no one else hears, who stares into the night like they're watching something you can't. And then there's the instincts. Territorial aggression, sudden mood swings, intense bursts of adrenaline. Maybe a coworker who lashes out with unnatural strength, a friend who always seems on edge like they're holding something back, rage that comes and goes like a storm. Pay attention to their hands. Are their fingernails thicker, curved unnaturally? Do they keep them hidden? Their teeth too. Are they sharp, filed, or simply too perfect? And let's not forget the old classic, an aversion to silver. Sure, it sounds like superstition, but some believe werewolves have a biological reaction to silver. Burns, rashes, nausea. It may seem ridiculous until you see someone refuse to wear silver jewelry even when gifted. or recoil from antique cutlery with a panic they can't explain. Then there's the sleep patterns, restlessness, insomnia around the full moon, wandering off in the middle of the night, waking up far from home with no memory of how they got there. They may offer excuses, sleepwalking, stress, a drinking problem, but it always happens, right on schedule. And what about appetite? Sudden meat cravings, a tendency to eat rare or even raw meat, or the opposite, fasting for days as if suppressing something inside. Some experts suggest there could be a real-world explanation for these behaviors. A psychological condition known as clinical lycanthropy, a rare delusional disorder where a person believes they can transform into a wolf. In some documented cases, individuals displayed animal-like behavior, growling, crawling, even biting others. Science chalks it up to schizophrenia, psychosis, or trauma-induced dissociation. But what if it's more than that? What if the condition isn't the cause, but the side effect? What if clinical lycanthropy isn't a mental illness, but a symptom, a glimpse into a truth we're not ready to face? You might already know someone who fits the profile. A neighbor who keeps to themselves. A friend who disappears every full moon. A stranger with eyes that catch the light just a little too strongly. Watch how they move. Watch how they breathe. Because if werewolves are real, they're not prowling the forests. They're blending into your daily life, hiding in plain sight, and they're very, very good at it. The transformation. It's the heartbeat of every werewolf story, the moment flesh rips, bones snap, and man becomes beast. It's cinematic, violent, iconic. But is it possible? Let's break it down. The idea of a human transforming physically into a creature with fur, fangs, and claws defies every known law of biology. The human skeleton is rigid. Bones can't just reshape themselves in seconds. Muscle mass doesn't multiply on command. And no known virus or hormone can produce the rapid physiological changes shown in myths and movies. Science is clear. A full-blown physical transformation from human to wolf-like creature is impossible. But that doesn't mean people haven't claimed to feel it. Let's turn to the mind. In cases of dissociative identity disorder, people report feeling like someone else entirely. Different voices, names, even body language. In rare psychological conditions like clinical lycanthropy, individuals are convinced they have turned into animals. They describe sensations of fur on their skin, teeth lengthening, and overwhelming bloodlust. It's not fantasy to them. It's not pretend. Their heart rate spikes. Their body heats up. Their behavior changes. To them, the transformation is real, even if their body hasn't changed at all. Some neurologists believe this might be linked to hyperactivity in the parietal lobes, the area of the brain responsible for body image. Others trace it to extreme trauma, a psychological fracture that allows the subconscious mind to invent a protector, a predator, to shield the conscious self. Now imagine that instinct, combined with cultural conditioning. You grow up hearing werewolf stories. You watch them on TV. You read about full moons and silver bullets. And then one night something inside you breaks. A trigger, a loss of control. You don't remember what happened, but you wake up with blood under your nails. You might not be a monster, but you believe you are. That belief can be powerful, dangerous, and in some communities, it becomes identity. Online forums and underground groups exist where people claim to live as werewolves. They call themselves Therians or other kin, individuals who believe their true form is non-human. Some claim spiritual transformation. Others swear it's genetic, a curse, a gift, a burden. And then there are those who don't talk at all. They don't post, they don't explain. They just disappear for a few nights every month. In folklore, the transformation is symbolic. It's about losing control, about the animal we all carry inside, the rage, the hunger, the fear. In many cultures, werewolf transformations were metaphors for adolescence, sexual awakening, or emotional trauma. In others, they were warnings about strangers, about deviance, about the danger of being different. But some say the transformation is more than a myth or a metaphor. It's a memory of something ancient, something buried, something waiting to return. And if that's true, then maybe we've been asking the wrong question all along. Maybe it's not how the transformation happens, but when. It's easy to get lost in the shadows, to follow the trail of folklore until you're convinced something is waiting in the dark. But now, let's turn on the light. Let's talk about facts. Because if we're going to talk about werewolves seriously, we have to ask, where's the proof? Despite centuries of stories, there is no verified photographic, biological, or physical evidence of a human turning into a wolf or wolf-like creature. No DNA samples, no bodies, no captured beasts that defy scientific explanation. Eyewitnesses? Plenty. But reliable, repeatable evidence? None. Every full moon, the internet lights up with claims. Sightings in rural woods, strange footprints in snow, animals torn apart in impossible ways. But just like UFOs or Bigfoot, the closer you get to the source, the blurrier the picture becomes. Werewolf encounters have become part of a modern mythology, driven not just by folklore, but by something more insidious, sensationalized media. Think about it. News outlets thrive on fear, the bizarre, the unexplained. It's easier to sell a headline like, "Local man believes he's a werewolf," than it is to report on the psychological condition behind it. Paranormal TV shows, YouTube horror series, creepypasta threads, they all feed the myth. They blur the line between entertainment and evidence, and sometimes they do it on purpose. Let's not forget the infamous Beast of Bray Road sightings in Wisconsin. A creature described as 7 feet tall, part man, part wolf, roaming the back roads in the 1990s. Local reports exploded, drawings, interviews. Fear spread like wildfire. But despite all the attention, no conclusive evidence was ever found, not even a footprint. Why do we keep believing? Because deep down we want to. We need monsters to explain the unexplainable, to give shape to our fears, to pass the blame when something horrible happens. But in reality, when those horrific events occur, when animals are slaughtered or people vanish, the answer is far more likely to be a predator, a human criminal, or even just the wilderness itself than a supernatural beast. This doesn't mean belief in werewolves is foolish. Not at all. In fact, belief reveals more about us than about the creatures we fear. It reveals how willing we are to abandon reason in the face of mystery. So how do we defend ourselves? With critical thinking, with science, with the understanding that not everything we fear is real, but everything we fear has meaning. Because while werewolves may not be prowling your street, what they represent, rage, transformation, fear of the unknown, does exist. And if we're not careful, we might start to see werewolves everywhere. Not because they're real, but because we've stopped looking for the truth. So here we are. You've followed the trail from ancient folklore to modern fear. You've learned how to recognize the signs, how to dissect the myth, how to separate fear from fact. But there's one question left. How do you protect yourself from something that might not even be real? First, remember this. Werewolves, the real kind, don't live in forests. They live in stories, in whispers, in the dark corners of the internet. They thrive not on flesh, but on belief. And the more we believe without thinking, the more power we give them. That's how myths survive. Not through claws or fangs, but through fear. The best weapon you have is awareness. Understand where the myths come from. Study their roots. Medieval fear, plague hysteria, misunderstood illness. Know the cultural patterns that gave rise to these monsters. When you see a story spreading online about a wolfman in the woods or someone claiming to transform under the full moon, pause. Ask questions. Don't let your imagination run wild before your brain has had a chance to catch. Because sometimes the real horror isn't the monster, it's the mob. History is full of tragedies caused by fear of the unknown. People accused of being witches, exiled, executed, and yes, in some places, hunted as werewolves. And all it took was a rumor, a superstition, a difference no one understood. So protect yourself by staying grounded. Learn to tell the difference between a story designed to scare you and one designed to inform you. Be wary of sensational headlines. Cross-check sources. Respect the mysteries of the mind, the strange conditions that can make someone believe there's something other than human, and maybe most importantly, Be kind to those who feel like outsiders. Because in many werewolf tales, it wasn't the creature who was evil. It was the curse, something passed down, something they never asked for, something they couldn't control. Think about that the next time you hear someone joking about monsters, or claiming a neighbor isn't quite right. Because while real-life werewolves may not exist, real people suffer because of fear, judgment, and myth every day. So the next time a story chills your bones, the next time you look into the eyes of someone strange and wonder what they're hiding, ask yourself, are you looking at a werewolf or just someone the world refuses to understand? Whether myth or madness, the monster is never far. It lives in the stories we tell, in the fears we feed, in the parts of ourselves we try to bury. Be careful what you believe, because some legend bite back. If you enjoyed this story and want more chilling legends and terrifying tales, make sure to like this video. It really helps us out. You can also click on our Ultimate Werewolf playlist to watch more horror and cryptid stories. The link is in the description below. And if you love horror, folklore, and unexplained mysteries, subscribe to the channel and join our growing community of fear seekers. But don't stop there. Turn on notifications by clicking the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Because in the world of horror, the scariest things happen when you least expect them. And trust me, you don't want to be left in the dark. Welcome to the darkness.